The billionaire fired his secretary for betrayal. Years later he discovered the child she hid was his all along. She's mine. The words caught in Matthias Sterling's throat as he stared at the little girl standing in the doorway. 7 years old. Dark curls framing her face. And eyes. Forest green eyes flecked with gold. His eyes. Staring back at him from a child he never knew existed. How old are you, Sophie? His voice came out hoarse, barely controlled. I'm 7.5. The girl replied with innocent pride. My birthday was in April. April. The word hit him like a freight train. 9 months. 9 months after that weekend in the Hamptons. 9 months after Isabel had fallen asleep in his arms, whispering she'd never felt safer with anyone. His gaze snapped to Isabel's face. She'd gone pale, her hand tightening on Sophie's shoulder like she was holding on to the only thing that mattered in the world. Matthias. Isabel's voice shook. Inside. Now. She wasn't talking to him. She was talking to their daughter. Find Grandma. Don't leave her side. But Mama. Sophie started. Now. The single word held such finality that the little girl obeyed without another protest. The balcony door clicked shut behind her, leaving them alone with a truth that hung heavier than the cold November air pressing down on Manhattan. She's mine. This time it wasn't a question. It was a statement. An accusation. A revelation that was tearing his world apart. Isabel's jaw set hard, her dark eyes blazing with something between rage and pain. She's mine. The emphasis landed like a slap. I've raised her, loved her, provided for her every single day of her life. Every single. I thought you betrayed me. His defense sounded hollow even to his own ears. I tried to tell you. Tears glittered in her eyes, but her voice stayed steel. I begged you to listen. But you wouldn't. You couldn't. Your pride mattered more than the truth. Your empire mattered more than me. When I found out the truth, I looked for you everywhere. He was pleading now, desperate. I called. I went to your apartment. I hired investigators. When I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks after you destroyed me, I called you. Her words came faster now, years of agony spilling out. 6 times, Matthias. I called 6 times. You blocked my number. I sent a letter to your office. It came back marked return to sender. I showed up at your building. Your security wouldn't let me past the lobby. You made yourself unreachable. So I stopped trying. Each revelation was a knife sliding between his ribs. He remembered those weeks. The haze of rage and betrayal. The instructions he'd given his staff. Refuse all contact from her. I wanted to prove she meant nothing to me. Return anything she sends. I couldn't bear to see her name. No exceptions. But what he'd actually done was throw away everything that mattered. If you're wondering whether this story ends in forgiveness or more heartbreak, or whether a billionaire who lost everything can ever find his way home, you need to hear what happens next. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me. This journey will change how you see redemption, pride, and the price we pay for the choices we make. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 3 days before that balcony confrontation. 3 days of rain that wouldn't stop falling. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Matthias Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office on the 47th floor, watching storm clouds bruise the Manhattan skyline. Water streaked down the glass like tears he'd forgotten how to shed. Somewhere below, in that jungle of steel and ambition, 8 million people rushed through their lives. Loving. Losing. Hoping. Breaking. Building dreams and watching them crumble. But he felt separate from all of it. Untouchable in his tower of glass and chrome. Alone in a way that money couldn't fix and power couldn't change. Mr. Sterling, the Matsumoto contract is ready for your signature. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, pulling him from thoughts that had grown darker with each passing year. Matthias turned from the window, catching his reflection ghosting across the glass. A man of 39 who'd built a real estate empire worth billions. Who commanded boardrooms with a word and moved markets with a signature. Yet standing there in his $15,000 suit, he couldn't remember the last time he'd truly smiled. Couldn't recall the last time he'd felt anything beyond the hollow satisfaction of another deal closed, another property acquired, another zero added to accounts that already held more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Send it in, Grace. He moved to his desk, a massive slab of imported walnut that had cost more than most people's cars. 8 years. 8 years since he'd made the decision that still woke him at 3 in the morning, heart hammering against his ribs, reaching across cold sheets for someone who was never there. 8 years since Isabel Moreno had walked out of his office, tears streaming down her face, and disappeared from his life entirely. Disappeared so completely it was as if she'd never existed at all. Except she had existed. She'd been real. The only real thing in his carefully constructed world of deals and developments and ruthless ambition. And he'd destroyed her. The memory surfaced unbidden, sharp as broken glass. It always did when he let his guard down. When the walls he'd built around that time started to crack. 8 years earlier. The firing scene played in his mind like a film he'd watched 1,000 times but could never change. His corner office, evening settling over the city, lights beginning to twinkle across the skyline like false stars. Isabel standing before his desk, trembling. She was clutching a folder against her chest like a shield, like it could protect her from what was coming. Her dark eyes were wide with disbelief. "You're firing me?" Her voice had been barely a whisper. Like she couldn't believe the words even as she said them. Like the world had tilted sideways and she was trying to find her balance. "The leak came from your computer, Isabel." His voice had been ice. He'd practiced it. Made it cold and hard because if he let any warmth in, any softness, his resolve would crumble. The Vanguard Tower proposal. Our entire development strategy. Sent to Morrison Holdings the night before our presentation. From your email. The evidence was right there on his screen, and he gestured to it with the detachment of a judge delivering a sentence. "I didn't." She'd started toward his desk, but stopped when she saw his expression. "Matthias, please, you know I would never." Her voice was breaking, fracturing like glass under pressure. "You know me. You know what we. The evidence is irrefutable." He'd forced himself to look away from her face, from the devastation blooming there like a wound. If he looked at her eyes, at the plea written there, he'd waver. And he couldn't afford to waver. The board was watching. His investors were demanding action. Security traced it directly to your workstation. You're the only one with those access credentials. The only one, Isabel. Someone must have used my computer. The words tumbled out desperately. Someone framed me. Matthias, please, just listen to me. Just give me a chance to explain. There has to be another explanation. Enough. The word had come out harsher than he'd intended. Around them, the office seemed to hold its breath. Beyond the windows, the city lights burned indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding in this room. I trusted you, Isabel. More than anyone. More than. He'd stopped himself before saying more than I've ever trusted anyone. Before admitting how deep it went. The unspoken truth hung between them heavy as smoke. He'd trusted her with more than business secrets. For 6 months, their relationship had evolved from professional to personal. From late nights reviewing contracts to later nights tangled in each other, discovering a connection that terrified him with its intensity. She knew things about him no one else knew. That he was afraid of becoming like his father. That success felt hollow when there was no one to share it with. That sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, he wondered if he was building an empire or a prison. "Matthias, please." Her voice broke completely now. "Just listen to me. I love. Security will escort you out." He'd picked up his phone, dismissing her, unable to look at her face another second without his resolve crumbling. "Your final paycheck will be deposited by Friday. Please leave your access card and company phone on the desk. Goodbye, Miss Moreno." The formality of her last name was a knife he'd twisted deliberately, cutting away the intimacy they'd shared, reducing her to just another employee who'd betrayed the company. Who'd betrayed him? She'd left without another word. He'd watched her place her access card on the desk with trembling fingers. I watched her pull her company phone from her purse. Watched security appear at the door. Two men in dark suits who avoided her eyes as they waited to escort her out. The walk of shame past cubicles where her co-workers pretended not to stare. He'd forced himself to watch it all through the glass walls of his office. Forced himself to witness what his decision had done. Her straight spine. Her lifted chin. The way she didn't look back. Not even once. He told himself it was the right decision. The evidence was damning. The board demanded action. Betrayal in business required swift, decisive response. Anything less was weakness, and weakness in his world was blood in the water. So he'd done what had to be done. I made a hard choice. Protected his empire. But when his private investigator delivered the real truth 3 weeks later, the folder had slipped from Matthias's numb fingers. Papers scattering across his desk like accusations. Richard Vance. His former partner. The man he'd forced out of the company 6 months before Isabel was hired. Vance had orchestrated the entire setup. Every detail planned with meticulous cruelty. He'd used a master key, one Matthias didn't even know existed, to access Isabel's computer after hours. He'd sent the proposal from her email. Covered his digital tracks with sophisticated software. Then sat back and watched the explosion he'd created. Watched Matthias destroy the woman he loved because that had been the point all along. Revenge served cold and precise. The investigator's report had been thorough. Security footage from the parking garage showing Vance entering the building at 2 in the morning. Digital forensics proving the email had been sent while Isabel was at a conference in Boston. Matthias had checked her travel receipts himself with shaking hands. Hotel room charge in Boston at the exact time the email was sent from her computer in New York. She couldn't have been in 2 places at once. Which meant she'd been innocent. Which meant he'd destroyed her for nothing. He tried calling her. The number was disconnected. A recorded message informing him the subscriber he was trying to reach was no longer available. He'd gone to her apartment in Brooklyn, the rent-controlled place she'd been so proud of. New tenants answered the door. A young couple who'd never heard of Isabel Moreno. He'd hired investigators who found nothing but dead ends. She'd vanished from social media. Had no forwarding address. Her friends and former colleagues claimed they didn't know where she'd gone. Or maybe they knew and wouldn't tell him. Maybe they'd closed ranks around her, protecting her from the man who'd hurt her. For 8 years, he'd searched. Every lead is going nowhere. Every trail is going cold. Isabel Moreno had vanished as completely as smoke, taking with her the only genuine happiness he'd known. The only person who'd seen past the money and the power to who he really was underneath. The scared kid from nowhere who'd built an empire to prove he was worth something. She'd seen all of it and loved him anyway. And he'd thrown her away. So he'd buried himself in work. Built his empire higher, wider, more impressive. Sterling Enterprises became a name that meant something. He bought buildings and developed properties and made billions. Hired hundreds of people and changed skylines. His face appeared on magazine covers. Forbes. Fortune. Time. Success stories praising his vision and ruthlessness. But every success felt hollow. Every victory rang empty. He became the man everyone wanted to meet and no one really knew. The billionaire who had everything. Except what mattered. Slowly, year by year, he calcified into the hollow man now standing in the rain-washed light, signing contracts with hands that ached for what they'd lost. Mr. Sterling. Grace stood in the doorway, concerned about creasing her features. She was 52, efficient, and had worked for him for 8 years. She'd seen him at his worst and never judged. Never asked questions he couldn't answer. You haven't touched your lunch. The salad sat wilting on the corner of his desk, untouched. And you have the Children's Literacy Foundation Gala tonight. The car will be here at 7. Matthias waved dismissively. Cancel it. He turned back to the window, to the rain that wouldn't stop. Sir, you're the keynote speaker. Grace didn't move from the doorway. And she hesitated. It's been 8 events you've cancelled this month. People are starting to talk. Let them talk. What did it matter? What did any of it matter? The charity circuit was just another performance. Another place to wear the mask and play the part. Smile for cameras and write checks and pretend the money meant something. Pretend he was making a difference when really he was just filling hours between meaningless days. But Grace's disappointed expression reminded him of his mother. The way she used to look at him when he made choices she didn't agree with but loved him too much to criticize. Grace had that same quality. Loyalty mixed with honest concern. He found himself sighing. Fine. I'll go. The words tasted like defeat. But maybe that's what every word tasted like now. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Contracts to review. Calls to return. A conference with the development team about the Hudson Yards project. Numbers and projections and timelines that should have excited him. This was a $2 billion development. The kind of project that defined careers. But he felt nothing. Just the familiar numbness that had become his constant companion. At 6:30, he changed in his private bathroom. Tuxedo custom made on Seville Row. Shirt handmade in Italy. Shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a stranger. Successful. Powerful. Empty. The same stranger who'd been staring back at him for 8 years. The drive to the Plaza Hotel took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets. His driver, Michael, navigated in silence. Michael had learned years ago that Mr. Sterling didn't want conversation. Just quiet and the sound of rain on the roof and the glow of the city sliding past. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered with Manhattan's elite. Crystal chandeliers throwing light across designer gowns and tuxedos. Women dripping diamonds. Men radiating power and wealth. All of them sipping champagne from crystal flutes and pretending their charitable donations absolved them of the city's inequality. Pretending that writing a check made them good people. Maybe it did. Maybe intention mattered less than impact. But Matthias couldn't shake the feeling that they were all just actors in an elaborate play. Reading lines they'd memorized. Playing parts they'd perfected. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Shaking hands. Making small talk. His smile was a perfectly calibrated mask. Warm enough to seem genuine. Distant enough to discourage real intimacy. Wonderful to see you, Matthias. A woman in red, wife of a hedge fund manager. He couldn't remember her name. Sterling, that Hudson Yards development is brilliant. A rival developer who'd bid against him and lost. The compliment was barbed. Absolutely inspired. I wish I'd thought of it first. Mr. Sterling, my daughter is here tonight. A board member from one of his subsidiary companies. Perhaps I could introduce you. She's recently divorced. A lawyer. Yale educated. I think you two might. He escaped to the balcony before the sentence could finish, loosening his bow tie as he breathed in the cold November air. It stung his lungs, sharp and clean after the perfumed heat of the ballroom. Below, Central Park stretched dark and vast. An island of shadow in the city's electric glow. Trees bare of leaves. Paths empty of people. The rain had finally stopped, leaving everything slick and gleaming. Not a fan of crowds either. The voice came from the shadowed corner of the balcony. Warm. Slightly amused. And achingly, impossibly familiar. A voice he'd heard in dreams for 8 years. A voice he'd convinced himself he'd never hear again. Matthias turned slowly, his heart stopping. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching like taffy. The background noise from the ballroom faded to nothing. The cold air, the distant traffic, the glittering city. All of it disappeared. There was only her. Isabel Moreno stood 10 feet away, wrapped in a simple black dress that had nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with elegance. Her dark hair was shorter now, grazing her shoulders instead of cascading down her back the way he remembered. Fine lines touched the corners of her eyes. Life's signatures. 8 years written on her face in ways that only made her more beautiful. But she was unmistakably, devastatingly herself. Those midnight eyes. That face he'd seen every night in his dreams. The woman he'd destroyed. Standing right there. Real. Alive. Within reach. Isabel. Her name left his lips like a prayer. Like salvation. Like damnation. She didn't run. Didn't cry. Just watched him with those eyes that had once looked at him with such trust. Such love. Now they were guarded. Careful. Assessing him like he was a stranger who might or might not be dangerous. Hello, Matthias. Her voice was calm. Controlled. 8 years of distance in those 2 words. Words failed him. 8 years of imagined conversations evaporated. All the speeches he'd rehearsed, all the apologies he'd crafted in the dark hours of the morning. Gone. His mind was blank except for the overwhelming reality of her presence. I've been looking for you. It was all he could manage. The simple truth. I know. She moved closer, into the light. I saw the investigator reports. A friend forwarded them to me. She paused. You were thorough. Then why didn't you? He stopped. The answer was obvious in the careful distance she maintained. In the way she held herself. Like she was ready to run if he came too close. You didn't want to be found. No. The single word landed like a stone. Heavy. Final. Matthias absorbed it, nodded. The pain was sharp but he deserved it. Deserved worse. I don't blame you. The words came out rough. Isabel, I know what really happened. Vance confessed before I forced him out. You were innocent. You were. His voice cracked. I destroyed everything because I was too proud, too afraid to trust what we had. Isabel's expression softened, just slightly. A crack in the armor. I tried to tell you. Her voice was quiet but steady. I know. He took a half step forward, then stopped when she tensed. I know. I'm so sorry. The apology was inadequate. Pathetic. But it was all he had. You wouldn't listen. She was watching him carefully, looking for something. Sincerity maybe. Or proof that he'd changed. Or maybe just looking at the wreckage of what they'd been. I know. He wanted to reach for her. I wanted to close the distance between them. But he stayed where he was. Gave her the space she needed. The space she deserved. Silence stretched between them. Filled with the distant music from the ballroom. The soft rustle of wind through barren trees in the park below. The muted sounds of the city that never stopped moving. 8 years of unspoken words hung in the air between them, heavy and complicated. "Why are you here?" Matthias finally asked. "At this gala?" Something flickered across her face. Hesitation. Calculation. Perhaps fear. "I'm the new executive director of the Children's Literacy Foundation. I started 3 months ago." "You're..." Matthias felt the world tilt. Felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "You're the one I'm supposed to be presenting the endowment to tonight." "Yes." Simple. Direct. "And you didn't tell the board you knew me?" He was trying to understand. Trying to piece together how this was possible. That she'd been in the city for 3 months. Working. Living. Breathing the same air. And he hadn't known. "I go by Isabel Vasquez now. My mother's maiden name." She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. Or maybe against him. "When I saw Sterling Enterprises was the primary donor, I almost resigned." She met his eyes. "But this job. It matters. These children matter. So I decided I could manage one evening in your presence." The word stung, but he deserved far worse. He deserved her hatred. Her rage. The fact that she could stand here and speak to him at all was more grace than he'd earned. "Isabel, please. Can we talk? Really talk? There's so much I need to say, to apologize for. 8 years of..." He gestured helplessly. "Please. Mama." The small voice came from the balcony doorway. Matthias turned to see a little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with a mass of dark curls and a blue velvet dress. She clutched a stuffed rabbit against her chest, looking uncertain. Her eyes found him first. Wide. Curious. Assessing in the way children assess strangers. "Sophie, sweetheart, I thought you were with Grandma in the lounge." Isabel's voice transformed. Filled with warmth as she moved toward the child. All the guardedness disappeared, replaced by pure maternal love. The girl, Sophie, stepped closer to her mother. "Grandma's talking to the mayor." "I got bored." Her eyes found Matthias again, widened with curiosity. "Who's that?" "A business associate." Isabel's hand rested protectively on her daughter's shoulder. Her body angled slightly, putting herself between Sophie and him. "Sophie, you should go back inside." But Matthias couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The girl had Isabel's dark hair. Her delicate features. The same slight dimple in her left cheek. But her eyes. Her eyes were forest green, flecked with gold. Exactly, precisely his own. He saw them in the mirror every day. Had inherited them from his Irish grandmother. And when Sophie tilted her head quizzically, it was a gesture he saw in his reflection constantly. A gesture his mother had always said was distinctly his. The world stopped turning. His heart stopped beating. Everything stopped except the terrible, wonderful, impossible recognition crashing through him. "How old are you, Sophie?" The question emerged hoarse, barely controlled. Every muscle in his body was tense, waiting for an answer he already knew but needed to hear. Isabel stiffened. "Matthias." His name was a warning. "Don't. I'm 7.5. Sophie replied proudly, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. "My birthday was in April. April 14th. I got a bike and Mama made chocolate cake with strawberries because that's my favorite and..." April. 9 months. 9 months after the night he and Isabel had shared his beach house in the Hamptons, the weekend before everything fell apart. The weekend they'd walked on the beach at dawn and she'd told him she was falling in love with him. The weekend he'd realized he was falling too, terrified and exhilarated all at once. 9 months after she'd fallen asleep in his arms, whispering that she'd never felt safer with anyone. 9 months after he'd watched her sleep and thought maybe, just maybe, he could build something real with her. Something that mattered more than money or power or any of it. Matthias's gaze snapped to Isabel's face. She'd gone pale. Her hand tightens on Sophie's shoulder, knuckles white with tension. Inside. Now. Her voice shook despite her effort to control it. Find Grandma. Don't leave her side. Do you understand me? But Mama, I want to. Sophie started. Now, Sophie. The sharpness in Isabel's voice made the girl's eyes widen. Please. The addition was softer. I'll be there in a minute. I promise. Just. Please go inside. Sophie, sensing the tension she didn't understand, obeyed without further protest. She cast one last curious glance at Matthias, then disappeared through the balcony door. It clicked shut behind her, the sound final. Leaving them alone with a truth that hung heavier than the winter air pressing down on the city. She's mine. Not a question. A statement. An accusation. A revelation that was tearing his world apart and putting it back together all at once. Isabel's jaw set hard, her dark eyes blazing with something between rage and pain and fear. She's mine. The emphasis landed like a slap. I've raised her, loved her, provided for her every single day of her life. Every single day, Matthias. Every fever. Every nightmare. Every scraped knee and broken toy and bad day at school. Every moment of her life, I was there. Where were you? Isabel. He started toward her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. You fired me, Matthias. Her voice rose, 8 years of buried pain erupting. Humiliated me in front of the entire office. Threw me out like garbage. Like I was nothing. Like what we had meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. I thought you betrayed me. The defense sounded hollow even to his own ears. Pathetic. I tried to tell you. Tears glittered in her eyes, but her voice stayed steel. I begged you to listen. I stood in your office and begged. Do you remember? I said please. I said I loved you. And you cut me off. You called security. I know. The words were ash in his mouth. I know. When I found out the truth, I looked for you everywhere. I called. I went to your apartment. I hired the best investigators money could buy. I never stopped looking. When I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks after you destroyed me, I called you. Her words came faster now, years of agony spilling out like a dam breaking. 6 times, Matthias. I called you 6 times. You blocked my number. Do you remember doing that? Blocking my number like I was some kind of stalker. The accusation hit him like a physical blow. He did remember. The day after she left. Sitting in his office, staring at his phone. Seeing her name flash on the screen. His finger hovering over the answer button. Then blocking it instead because he couldn't. He couldn't hear her voice. Couldn't risk his resolve crumbling. Couldn't face the possibility that he might be wrong. I didn't know. The words were weak. Useless. I didn't know you were pregnant. If I'd known. I sent a letter to your office. She wasn't done. Wasn't finished making him understand what he'd done. It came back marked return to sender. I showed up at your building. Do you know what your security told me? That they had strict instructions not to allow me on the premises. That if I tried again, they'd call the police. Your security threatened to have me arrested, Matthias. Each revelation was a knife sliding between his ribs. He remembered those instructions. Remembered giving them to his head of security. No contact with Isabel Moreno under any circumstances. Return any correspondence. If she appears, turn her away. No exceptions. He'd wanted to prove she meant nothing to him. Wanted to build walls so high she could never climb over them. You made yourself unreachable. Isabel's voice broke slightly, the first crack in her composure. So I stopped trying. I was pregnant, fired, broke. My mother had to move in to help me. We were barely making rent. I was sick every morning. Terrified every night. And completely, utterly alone. So I stopped trying to reach a man who'd made it abundantly clear he wanted nothing to do with me. If I'd known about the baby. About Sophie. He tried again. Would you? She challenged, taking a step toward him. Her face was flushed with anger and pain. Would you really? The man who didn't trust me enough to investigate before destroying my career. The man who loved his pride more than truth. The man who blocked my number and returned my letters and threatened to have me arrested. That man would have stepped up for an unexpected pregnancy. Yes. He said it with every ounce of conviction he had. Yes, Isabel. I would have. I swear to you, if I'd known, everything would have been different. I would have been there. For you. For her. For both of you. She stared at him, searching his face for lies. For manipulation. For the same cold calculation she'd seen 8 years ago. But something in his expression made her anger falter. Not disappear. But shift into something more complicated. I built a life without you, Matthias. Her voice was quieter now but no less intense. I went back to school. Got my master's in nonprofit management while working 2 jobs and raising a baby. My mother sold her house to help with medical bills because the pregnancy was high risk. I was hospitalized twice. Twice, Matthias. Stress-induced complications that could have cost me my daughter. And where were you? Building your empire. Making billions. Living in your tower while I was. She stopped, pressing a hand to her chest. While I was fighting to survive. To give my daughter a life. To make sure she never felt the absence of her father because I loved her enough for 2 parents. The words shattered something inside him. Some last defense he'd been holding on to. The rationalization that he couldn't have known. That it wasn't his fault. That Isabel should have tried harder to reach him. It crumbled under the weight of what she'd endured. What he'd put her through with his pride and his fear and his stubborn refusal to see past his own pain. We don't need your money or your guilt. She lifted her chin, defiant. We've done fine without you. More than fine. Sophie is happy, healthy, and loved. She has friends and hobbies and dreams. She has a life. A good life. And we don't need you coming in now with your billions and your regret, thinking you can fix 8 years with a checkbook. What about what Sophie needs? The words emerged sharp, desperate. Doesn't she deserve to know her father? To have both parents? Her father? Isabel's laugh was bitter, cutting. You're a stranger with her eyes. Being a father takes more than genetics, Matthias. It takes showing up. Being present. Making sacrifices. Putting someone else's needs before your own. Have you ever done that? Have you ever put anyone before yourself and your ambition? The accusation cut deep because it was true. He'd never put anyone first. Not his parents. Not his friends. Not Isabel. Certainly not a daughter he didn't know existed. His entire life had been about building, acquiring, succeeding. Proving he was worth something. But what was he worth if he'd missed 7 years of his daughter's life? What was any of it worth? Then let me try. Matthias moved closer, every barrier he'd built around his heart crumbling. Please, Isabel. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed your trust. I know I was cruel and prideful and wrong about everything. But don't punish Sophie for my failures. She deserves to know her father. And I. His voice broke. I want to know her. I want to be there. I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever you need. Just. Please don't shut me out. Not from her. Please. Isabel's composure finally cracked. A sob escaped, raw and painful. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to contain it. I'm not punishing anyone. The words came out muffled. I'm protecting her. And myself. You have no idea what it was like. Pregnant. Fired. Broke. Completely alone. I threw up every morning from stress and fear. I had panic attacks. I was hospitalized when I was 6 months pregnant because my blood pressure was dangerously high. The doctors said I could lose her. They said the stress might. She couldn't finish. The memory was too painful. My mother had to sell her house, the house she'd lived in for 30 years, to pay the medical bills. Because I had no job. No insurance. No partner. Nothing. Matthias's eyes closed against the wave of self-loathing. Images flashed through his mind. Isabel is pregnant and terrified. In a hospital bed. Fighting for their daughter while he signed contracts and made millions. The contrast was unbearable. Let me make it right. The plea was desperate. Let me help. Let me be there now. I can't change the past, but I can. I can do better. I will do better. You can't make it right. She wiped angrily at her tears. You can't buy back 7 years, Matthias. You can't purchase missed birthdays or bedtime stories or first steps. My daughter's entire life has happened without you. And you want to just... What? Walk in now. Play daddy. Disrupt everything we've built. I know. He opened his eyes, meeting hers with raw honesty. I know I can't buy back time. I know I missed everything. And I'll regret that every day for the rest of my life. But I can be there for the years ahead. If you'll allow it. If Sophie wants that. I'm not asking to disrupt your life. I'm asking for a chance. To know my daughter. To be part of her future if not her past. Isabel studied him, searching for manipulation or self-interest. Looking for the man who'd fired her without listening. The man who'd valued pride over truth. The man who'd made himself unreachable. But his eyes were different now. Older. Sadder. Honest in a way they hadn't been 8 years ago. Why? She finally asked. Why does this suddenly matter to you? Because I've spent 8 years as a dead man walking. Matthias's voice was quiet, stripped of pretense. Building an empire that means nothing. Surrounded by people I don't care about. I have billions in the bank and I'd trade all of it. Every penny. Every property. Every success. To go back and make different choices. The only real thing I ever had was what we shared. What you and I had. And I destroyed it because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Her voice was softer now. Less defensive. More curious. Of needing you. The admission cost him. Each word was pulled from somewhere deep and painful. Of loving you more than I loved control. You were the only person who ever saw past the money and power to who I really was. The scared kid from nowhere trying to prove he was worth something. And when I thought you'd betrayed me. He swallowed hard. It confirmed my deepest fear. That I was ultimately unlovable. That if someone really knew me, they'd use that knowledge to hurt me. So I struck first. I hurt you before you could hurt me worse. And I was wrong. About everything. Isabel's breath hitched. In the shadows of the balcony, they stood close enough to touch but separated by chasms of hurt. The ballroom music drifted faintly through the glass. Somewhere in the city, people were living normal lives. Falling in love. Raising children. Being happy. But here, on this balcony, two people stood in the wreckage of what they'd been and what they might have become. I loved you, Matthias. The words came out as a whisper. So much it terrified me too. I'd never felt that way about anyone. And you shattered me. When you called security to escort me out. When you looked at me like I was nothing. Like I was trash to be discarded. Something inside me broke. Something I didn't know could break. I know. His hands clenched at his sides, physically restraining himself from reaching for her. I know. And I would spend the rest of my life making amends if you'd let me. Not for us. I know what we had is gone. But for Sophie. Please. Let me try to be the father she deserves. I can't. Her voice broke completely. I can't go through that again. I have Sophie to think about. If you come into her life and then leave when it gets hard. When being a father becomes inconvenient or boring or interferes with your empire. I can't let her experience that abandonment. I won't. I won't leave. The words were a vow. I swear on everything I am, I won't leave either of you again. I will be there. Every day. Whatever you need. However you'll let me. Isabel shook her head, tears streaming freely now. I don't know if I can trust that. Trust you. How do I know you've really changed? How do I know this isn't just guilt talking? That in 6 months or a year, you won't get bored of playing father and go back to your old life? Then don't trust me. Not yet. He pulled a business card from his inside pocket, wrote something on the back with a pen from the same pocket. My personal number. The one that doesn't go through assistants or secretaries. The one you can't block because I'll answer every time it rings. No matter what. Call me when. If you're ready. For Sophie's sake, at least let me try. Let me prove I've changed. I'll wait as long as it takes. She took the card with trembling fingers, staring at the numbers written in his sharp handwriting. Behind them, the balcony door opened. An older woman appeared, Sophie at her side. The woman's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. Her daughter was crying. The strange man who'd clearly caused it. Her grandmother instincts activated immediately, body language shifting to protective. Is everything all right, Mija? The woman's voice was tight with concern and suspicion. Isabel quickly wiped her face, composing herself with visible effort. Years of practice. Years of being strong for her daughter. Yes, Mama. Mr. Sterling and I were just discussing the endowment. She took Sophie's hand, holding it like a lifeline. We should get you home, Querida. School tomorrow. But the party. Sophie started, looking disappointed. It is boring anyway. Isabel said with forced lightness. We'll get ice cream on the way home instead. Your favorite. Mint chocolate chip. Sophie's face brightened immediately, the way only a child's can. With extra sprinkles. Extra sprinkles. Isabel confirmed, managing a smile. Say goodbye. Sophie turned to Matthias with those unsettling green eyes. His eyes staring back at him from his daughter's face. Bye, mister. Her voice was sweet, innocent, unaware of the seismic shift happening in the adult world around her. Goodbye, Sophie. He managed a smile that felt like his heart breaking. Cracking open to let in light and pain all at once. It was wonderful to meet you. For words that meant I wish I'd known you existed. I wish I'd been there. I wish I could have 7 years back. Then they were gone. Isabel's mother ushering them through the door with one last suspicious glance at Matthias. The door closed, leaving him alone on the balcony with the cold wind and the weight of his failures. And for the first time in 8 years, a fragile, terrifying sliver of hope. He stood there long after they'd gone, staring at the spot where Sophie had stood. Where his daughter? His daughter. The words still felt impossible. Where his daughter had looked at him with curiosity instead of recognition. Where the most important person in his life had been a stranger. Below, Central Park stretched dark and vast. Above, clouds covered the stars. Around him, Manhattan glowed and hummed with relentless energy. 8 million stories. 8 million lives. And somewhere in those streets, Isabel was taking their daughter home. Tucking her into bed. Reading her a story maybe. Kissing her forehead. All the things he should have been doing for 7 years. He pulled out his phone, stared at the screen. Then pulled up his contacts and unblocked Isabel's old number. It was a meaningless gesture. She'd changed her number. But it felt important. Like removing a barrier he should never have erected. When he finally went back inside, the gala was in full swing. Someone handed him a microphone. He gave a speech about literacy and opportunity and the importance of education. Words he believed. A cause that mattered. The audience applauded. Checks were written. The foundation would receive funding that would help thousands of children. But all he could think about was one child. One little girl with dark curls and his eyes. One daughter who didn't know he existed. One chance he didn't deserve but wanted more than he'd ever wanted anything. 3 days passed with no call. 3 days that felt like 3 years. Matthias attended meetings on autopilot. Signed documents without reading them as carefully as he should. Made decisions worth millions while his mind was elsewhere. At night, he stared at his phone. Willing it to ring. Knowing it wouldn't. Understanding why. Grace noticed. Of course she noticed. 8 years working for someone, you learn to read their moods. Are you all right, sir? She asked on the 3rd day, setting coffee on his desk. You seem distracted. I'm fine. The lie was automatic. Then, because she deserved better. I found out I have a daughter. The words felt strange. Foreign. Wonderful. Grace's eyes widened. Sir. 7 years old. I never knew. He stared out the window at the city that suddenly felt different. Full of possibility and pain. Her mother and I. We had a falling out. Before Isabel knew she was pregnant. Before. He couldn't finish. Couldn't explain the magnitude of what he'd done. That's. Grace sat down in the chair across from his desk, something she never did. That's quite a revelation. She has my eyes. He said it to the window, to the city, to himself. Dark curls and my eyes, and I met her for 5 minutes and I'd give up everything for more. What are you going to do? Grace's voice was gentle. Understanding. Wait. He looked at his phone for the 1000th time. Her mother needs to decide if I deserve a chance. And honestly. He met Grace's eyes. I'm not sure I do. Children are resilient. Grace said quietly. And forgiving. If you show up. If you're consistent and honest and truly present. They forgive almost anything. I missed 7 years. Then don't miss any more. Simple. Direct. The kind of advice that cuts through complexity to truth. On the 4th day, Grace knocked on his office door with an expression he couldn't quite read. Sir, there's Miss Vasquez here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's personal. Matthias's heart slammed against his ribs. Send her in. Please. He stood, suddenly uncertain what to do with his hands. Straightened papers that didn't need straightening. Moved around his desk. I stood behind it. No, that was too formal. Came back around. I tried to look casual. Failed completely. Isabel entered wearing jeans and a wool coat, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd slept as poorly as he had. But determined. She stopped a few feet from his desk, clutching her purse like armor. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble. "About what Sophie needs. Not what I want or what you want. What's best for her." Matthias nodded, afraid to speak. Afraid to break whatever fragile resolve had brought her here. "She asks about her father sometimes," Isabel continued, her voice carefully controlled. "I've always told her the truth. That we loved each other once, but life pulled us apart. That he doesn't know about her. That's the truth. That he doesn't know." She met his eyes, and he saw the pain there. The years of questions she'd had to answer alone. "I don't want her to grow up feeling unwanted. The way I felt. The way I felt after you threw me away." The words pierced him like an arrow finding its mark. "Isabel. Let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "If you want to be part of Sophie's life, I won't stop you. But there are conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. Anything." The word came out hoarse. "Whatever you need. We start slow. Very slow. A meeting in a public place, supervised. If Sophie's comfortable, maybe another meeting. But at her pace, Matthias. Not yours. Not mine. Hers. We follow her lead. If she wants more time, we give her more time. If she needs space, we give her space. Clear? Of course. Absolutely. And you need to be certain." Isabel's voice hardened, steel beneath the softness. "Because if you decide fatherhood is too difficult, too boring, too much of an inconvenience. If you abandon her the way you abandoned me." Her voice cracked slightly but she pushed through. "I will make sure you never hurt her again. Do you understand me? I will protect my daughter with everything I have. And you will not. You will not break her heart. I understand." Matthias stood, moving around the desk slowly. Non-threatening. "I swear to you, Isabel, I will never abandon either of you again. I will spend every day proving I've changed. Every single day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes. People don't change, Matthias." She was watching him carefully. Looking for the lie. The manipulation. The man who'd valued pride over truth. Maybe not fundamentally. He acknowledged, stopping a few feet away. Giving her space. But they can choose different actions. Better ones. I'm choosing Sophie. I'm choosing to be the father she deserves, even though I haven't earned that title. And if you'll let me. If you'll ever. I'm choosing you too. Isabel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'm not ready for that." The admission was quiet. Honest. "I'm not ready to trust you with my heart again." "I know." He accepted it without argument. "I'll wait." "You might be waiting a long time." It was a warning and a test. "Then I'll wait a long time." He allowed himself the smallest smile. "I've spent 8 years looking for you, Isabel. I'm not going anywhere now. Not ever. You set the pace. You set the terms. I'll follow your lead." She studied him for a long moment. Searching for the catch. The angle. The self-interest that had always driven him. But his eyes were clear. Honest. Patient. Different from the man who'd fired her 8 years ago. Finally, she pulled a small photograph from her purse and placed it on his desk. Sophie grinned at the camera, gap-toothed and joyful, holding up a finger painting of what might have been a house or possibly a spaceship. Hard to tell with 7-year-old Art. But her smile. Her smile was pure sunshine. Saturday. 2 o'clock. Central Park Zoo. We'll be by the sea lion exhibit. Isabel's voice was steady, but he could hear the tremor underneath. Don't be late. And Matthias. No presents. Just yourself. That's all she needs right now. Just you, showing up. Matthias picked up the photo with reverent hands. Like it was made of spun glass. Like it was the most valuable thing he'd ever held. And maybe it was. I'll be there. I promise. Matthias. Isabel paused at the door, hand on the frame. Don't make me regret this. I won't. The vow was absolute. I promise. After she left, Matthias sank into his chair, staring at the photo of his daughter. The child he'd never known existed. Who already owned every piece of his broken heart. Her smile. The gap in her teeth. The paint on her fingers. The joy in her eyes. 7 years of her life had happened without him. But maybe he could be there for the years ahead. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Sterling, the investors from Hong Kong are waiting in conference room B. They've been there for 10 minutes. Cancel it. He said, unable to look away from Sophie's smile. Cancel everything this week. Reschedule it all. Sir. Grace's voice held surprise. These are very important meetings. The Hong Kong project is. I have more important things to attend to. He cut her off gently but firmly. Family things. There was a pause. Then Grace's voice came back, warmer. Understood, Mr. Sterling. I'll handle the rescheduling. For the first time in 8 years, Matthias Sterling had something worth more than his empire. Worth more than billions. Worth more than success or power or any of it. He had hope. Saturday arrived wrapped in rare November sunshine. The kind of day that felt like a gift after weeks of rain. The sky stretched impossibly blue over Central Park, and the air carried that crisp bite that promised winter was coming but hadn't quite arrived yet. Matthias reached the zoo at 1:45. Too nervous to wait any longer. Too terrified of being even a minute late. He'd spent the entire morning agonizing over what to wear. A suit seemed too formal. Like he was going to a business meeting instead of meeting his daughter. Jeans felt too casual. Like he wasn't taking it seriously enough. He'd finally settled on dark slacks and a charcoal sweater. Leather jacket because November could be unpredictable. Comfortable shoes because he had no idea how much walking was involved in zoo visits with 7-year-olds. He'd purchased and discarded 6 different gifts. A stuffed elephant. Too generic. A book about marine biology. Too presumptuous, what if she didn't like science? A doll. What if she wasn't into dolls? A science kit. Again, presumptuous. Art supplies. Maybe. A telescope for stargazing. Too expensive, too much, too soon. Finally, Isabel had texted him the night before. No presents. Just yourself. That's all she needs right now. So he'd arrived empty-handed. Feeling naked without something to offer. Some tangible proof that he cared. But maybe that was the point. Maybe caring couldn't be wrapped in a box with a bow. Maybe it had to be shown in other ways. He found them by the sea lions, just as Isabel had promised. She sat on a bench, reading a book. Something by Toni Morrison. Isabel had always loved Morrison's work. He remembered that. Remembered late nights when they'd talk about books and dreams and everything they wanted from life. She looked peaceful sitting there. Absorbed in the story. Sunlight catching the shorter strands of her dark hair. Sophie leaned against the railing about 10 feet away, completely captivated by the swimming animals. She wore jeans and a purple jacket with pink sneakers. Her dark curls were pulled into 2 ponytails. She was talking to the sea lions. He could see her lips moving. Telling them something important, probably. Children did that. Assigned personalities to animals. Created whole worlds in their imaginations. Matthias's steps slowed as he approached. Suddenly terrified in a way boardrooms had never made him. What if Sophie didn't like him? What if he said the wrong thing? What if he was awkward and weird and she decided she didn't want a father after all? What if 7 years was too long and the gap was too wide and he'd missed his chance? Isabel looked up. Spotted him. Their eyes met across the distance and something passed between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. She said something to Sophie. The little girl turned. Those green eyes finding his across the zoo pathway. His eyes. Looking at him from his daughter's face. He raised a hand in a tentative wave. Heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. Sophie waved back. Small hand lifting. Fingers wiggling. The simplest gesture in the world. It was nothing. A 7-year-old's casual greeting to a stranger. But to Matthias, it felt like absolution. Like maybe, possibly, there was hope. He crossed the final distance and stopped a respectful few feet away. Giving her space. Not crowding. Hello. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Hi. Sophie said. Then, with a child's devastating directness. Mama says you're my father. No preamble. No hesitation. Just the simple truth delivered like a weather report. Matthias glanced at Isabel. She nodded slightly. Giving him permission to confirm it. He crouched down to Sophie's eye level. Didn't want to tower over her. Wanted to meet her where she was. Yes. I am. 2 words that changed everything. Sophie considered this. Head tilting in that gesture he saw in the mirror every single day. Were you on a really long business trip? That's what Mama said. That you had to be away for work. His throat tightened. Isabel had protected him in her explanation. Given him grace he hadn't earned. Crafted a story that made his absence about circumstance instead of choice. He wanted to correct it. To tell the truth. But looking at Sophie's open, trusting face, he understood. The truth could come later. When she was old enough to understand complexity. Right now, she just needed simple. Something like that. He said carefully. But I'm here now. And I'd really like to get to know you. If that's okay with you. Do you like sea lions? She asked. As if this was the most important question in the world. As if his answer would determine everything. The question surprised a genuine laugh from him. The first real laugh he'd had and he couldn't remember how long. I do now. He said honestly. They're my favorite. Sophie announced. Except penguins. And red pandas. Those are all my favorites too. She grabbed his hand with the unself-conscious trust of childhood. No hesitation. No fear. Just a small warm hand wrapping around his fingers and pulling him toward the railing. See that one? The fat one sleeping on the rock. His name is Chester. I named him. Matthias looked at Isabel over Sophie's head. She was watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Pain and hope and fear all tangled together. Her book forgotten in her lap. He mouthed the words. Thank you. She nodded once. Then turned away. But not before he saw her wipe at her eyes. They spent the next 2 hours moving through the zoo. Sophie chattered endlessly. A constant stream of observations and questions and elaborate stories she'd invented about the animals' lives. Chester the sea lion was actually a king in disguise. The penguins were a family of spies. The red pandas were magical creatures who could grant wishes but only on Tuesdays. Matthias listened to every word, committing every detail to memory. The way she scrunched her nose when she was thinking hard about something. How she hummed while walking between exhibits. Some tune he didn't recognize. Probably from a movie or a show she loved. Her elaborate hand gestures when she got excited about something. Arms waving. Fingers pointing. Her whole body involved in the storytelling. At the penguin exhibit, she explained each one's personality. That one's grumpy. See how he stands away from the others. That one's the baby. She's learning to swim. That one's the mama. She protects everyone. How do you know all this? Matthias asked, genuinely curious. I watch. Sophie said simply. If you watch long enough, you can tell. Animals are like people. They have feelings and friends and favorite things. That's very wise. He said seriously. Not talking down to her. Treating her observation with the respect it deserved. Mama says I notice things other people miss. Sophie beamed at the compliment to her mother. She says I get that from. She stopped. Looked at him with sudden shyness. From you, maybe. Maybe you do. His voice was thick with emotion. I notice things too. At the polar bear exhibit, they watched the massive white bear swim underwater. Its movement surprisingly graceful for such a large animal. Sophie pressed against the glass. Matthias stood beside her. Isabel hung back. Always present. Always watching. But giving them space. They got ice cream from a cart. Sophie ordered mint chocolate chip with rainbow sprinkles. Matthias got vanilla. She laughed at his choice. That's boring. She announced with 7-year-old certainty. I like boring sometimes. He said. It's safe. Safe is boring. She countered. You should try new things. She held out her cone. Want a taste? The simple offer felt monumental. Sharing. Trust. Connection. He took a small taste. It's good. He admitted. Much better than boring vanilla. Told you. She looked triumphant. Isabel watched this exchange from a nearby bench. He caught her eye. Saw something soften in her expression. Sophie told him about school. About her best friend Maria who could do a cartwheel but Sophie couldn't yet but she was practicing. About her teacher Miss Peterson who was nice but gave too much homework. About the boy named Jake who pulled her hair and she told him to stop and he did because she used her fierce voice. Your fierce voice? Matthias asked, smiling. Like this. Sophie demonstrated. Stop it right now. Her voice dropped low. Eyebrows pulled together. Hands on hips. The effect was adorable, trying to be intimidating. That's very fierce. He agreed. I bet Jake won't pull your hair again. He better not. Sophie said firmly. Or I'll tell Mama. And Mama's fierce voice is way scarier than mine. I remember. Matthias said quietly. Looking at Isabel. I remember your mother's fierce voice. Isabel met his eyes. A ghost of a smile touching her lips. Sophie talked about piano lessons. How she was learning a song called Für Elise but it was really hard and her fingers didn't always do what her brain told them to. About how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Or maybe an astronaut. Or possibly both. You could definitely be both. Matthias said seriously. Space animals probably need veterinarians too. Sophie stopped walking. Looked at him with wide eyes. Space animals. She breathed. Do you think there are space animals? I think the universe is pretty big. he said. So probably. Somewhere. That would be so cool. She grabbed his hand again, swinging it between them as they walked. You're silly, she announced. But good, silly. Not mean silly. The distinction seemed important to her. He wondered if someone had been mean silly to her before. The thought made something protective rise in his chest. They saw the elephants. The giraffes with their impossibly long necks. The gorillas sitting in family groups that reminded Matthias painfully of what he'd missed. The tigers pacing their enclosure with contained power. Isabel maintained her careful distance. Always present. Never intrusive. Occasionally Matthias would catch her watching them with that same complex expression. He understood what she was doing. Measuring. Judging. Protecting. Making sure he was safe for her daughter. He didn't resent it. He'd earned her caution. Earned her distrust. This was his chance to prove he'd changed. He wouldn't waste it. As afternoon faded toward evening, Sophie began to tire. Her endless energy is finally depleting. The chatter slowed. The skipping became walking. She yawned widely. Not bothering to cover her mouth. Isabel checked her watch. We should head home, querida. Dinner time. Already? Sophie's face fell. Genuine disappointment. But we didn't see the polar bears yet. We saw the polar bears, sweetness. Isabel's voice was gentle. Remember? The big one swimming. Oh yeah. Sophie yawned again. Can we see the monkeys next time? Next time. The words hung in the air. Matthias held his breath. We'll see. Isabel said carefully. Sophie turned to Matthias. Will you come to the zoo with us again? The question was so hopeful. So open. So trusting in a way that made his chest ache. He looked at Isabel. Seeking permission. Not wanting to overstep. Not wanting to promise something Isabel wouldn't allow. She hesitated. He could see the war in her eyes. Protecting her daughter. Protecting herself. But also seeing Sophie's joy. Seeing how the afternoon had gone. No disasters. No awkwardness. Just a father and daughter getting to know each other. Finally, she gave a small nod. Almost imperceptible. But he saw it. I would love that. Matthias said to Sophie. Whenever your mother says it's okay. Can he have dinner with us tonight, Mama? Sophie asked. The request surprised everyone. Please. I don't want him to leave yet. Isabel's expression tightened. Sophie. The name was a warning. We talked about this. About taking things slow. I know. But he's nice. And he likes animals. And he shared my ice cream even though he was scared it wouldn't be boring. Sophie's logic was 7-year-old perfect. Please, Mama. Just dinner. I promise I'll eat my vegetables. That last part made Isabel's lips twitch. The promise of vegetable consumption was clearly Sophie's ultimate bargaining chip. The simple statement hung in the air. I don't want him to leave yet. 5 words from a child who'd never known her father. Who was opening her heart with the fearless trust children had before the world taught them caution. Isabel's gaze met Matthias's over their daughter's head. And in that moment, he saw his own reflection in her eyes. The loneliness. The yearning. The fear of hoping for too much. If your mother agrees. Matthias said carefully. I would be honored. But it's completely up to her. We do what makes your mother comfortable. Okay. Sophie turned pleading eyes to Isabel. The same eyes that had probably won 1,000 small battles. The eyes that were impossible to resist. Isabel looked between them. Her daughter's hopeful face. Matthias's careful neutrality. Not pressuring. Not manipulating. Just waiting for her decision. He could see the war happening behind her eyes. The fear. The anger that hadn't fully faded. The protection of her daughter and her own battered heart. But also the afternoon that had gone well. Sophie's joy. The careful way Matthias had treated their daughter. How he'd listened to every word. Crouch to her level. Take her seriously. Finally, she sighed. Just dinner. The words were firm. Clear boundaries. And then you leave. Understood? Sophie cheered. Throwing her arms around Isabel's legs. Thank you, Mama. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As they walked toward the subway. Isabel had refused his offer of a car, said they always took the subway, and didn't want to change routines. Sophie reached up and took both their hands. Swinging between them like kids do. Like they were a family out for a normal day. Other people passing them probably thought exactly that. A mom and dad and their daughter. Coming home from the zoo. Normal. Happy. Together. Matthias caught Isabel's eye over Sophie's head. Thank you. He said softly. The words carried more weight than 2 syllables should hold. Don't thank me yet. She replied. But something had softened in her voice. The slightest crack in the walls she'd built. The smallest opening. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The subway ride to Brooklyn took 30 minutes. Sophie chattered about the animals they'd seen. Ranking them in order of favorites. School awards hung on the wall. Perfect attendance. Most improved in math. Young Author Award for a story about a girl who could talk to animals. Trophies on a shelf. Soccer participation trophy. Piano recital certificate. Art show ribbon. While Isabel disappeared into the kitchen to start dinner, Sophie gave him the full tour. Dragging him by the hand. Unlimited energy restored now that they were home. This is where Mama works. She pointed to a small desk in the corner of the living room. Papers neatly stacked. Laptop closed. A photo of Sophie in a frame. She brings work home sometimes, but I'm not allowed to touch her computer because it has important stuff. This is where we watch movies. A well-worn couch. Throw blankets. Cushions that had clearly been used for fort building. We watch Disney movies mostly. Moana is my favorite. Do you like Moana? I haven't seen it. Matthias admitted. Sophie's eyes widened like he'd admitted to never breathing air. You've never seen Moana? We have to fix that. Mama. She called toward the kitchen. Can we watch Moana after dinner? It's a school night, Mija. Isabel's voice drifted back. Maybe this weekend. This is where Grandma stays when she visits. Sophie pointed to a daybed tucked into an alcove. She lives in New Jersey now, but she comes every Tuesday for dinner. You'll probably meet her. She makes the best empanadas. I'd like that. Matthias said. Though the thought of meeting Isabel's mother was terrifying. She knew everything. Knew what he'd done. Would probably want to protect her daughter and granddaughter from him. He didn't blame her. Finally, Sophie pulled him to her room. The door had been decorated with stickers. Stars and planets and animals. This is my room. She announced proudly. It was an explosion of childhood. Books overflowing from a small shelf. Titles ranging from picture books to early chapter books. Charlotte's Web. The Wild Robot. Anything with animals seemed to be her preference. Stuffed animals covered the bed. A worn teddy bear. Several dogs. A giraffe. The rabbit from the gala. A keyboard piano in one corner. Sheet music propped up. For Elise, just like she'd said. A telescope by the window. Pointed toward the sky. Drawings and paintings covering every available wall space. Some framed. Some taped up with Scotch tape. I like to draw. She explained unnecessarily. Showing him a recent creation. A dragon riding a bicycle. The dragon was purple. The bicycle was rainbow. It defied physics and logic and was absolutely perfect. And I'm learning piano. She played a few notes. Hesitant. Careful. Still learning. And I want to be a veterinarian. Or an astronaut. Or maybe both. You could definitely be both. Matthias said seriously. Not talking down to her. Treating her dream with the respect it deserved. Space animals need veterinarians too. Someone has to take care of them. Sophie giggled. Space animals. She loved the concept. You said that before. Do you really think there are space animals? I think the universe is infinite. He said. So statistically, probably. Somewhere out there are probably animals we can't even imagine. And they'll need someone to take care of them. Might as well be you. Yeah. Sophie breathed. Might as well be me. Over dinner, take-out Chinese that Isabel had ordered while Matthias and Sophie were talking, conversation came easier. Sophie dominated as children do. But occasionally Isabel would add details. Filling in the stories. Giving context. Sophie taught herself to read at 4. Isabel said, passing the container of lo mein. Couldn't keep her away from books. Still can't. I like stories. Sophie explained through a mouthful of fried rice. Animals mostly. But also adventure stories. And magic. Do you like to read? I do. Matthias said. Though I don't make enough time for it anymore. I used to read all the time when I was your age. What was your favorite book? Sophie asked. Where the Wild Things Are. He answered without hesitation. About a boy who sails away to an island of monsters and becomes their king. I know that one. Sophie bounced in her seat. It's good. The monsters are nice monsters. Not scary. She's obsessed with documentaries. Isabel added. Watches them constantly. Knows more about animals than most adults. Blue Planet is my favorite. Sophie announced. And Planet Earth. David Attenborough is the best. She pronounced the name carefully. Perfectly. Like she'd practiced. She names every animal she sees. Isabel said. Then seemed startled she'd admitted it. Like she'd forgotten to maintain distance. Like this was becoming dangerously comfortable. She gets that from you. Matthias said quietly. Looking at Isabel. You always named the pigeons outside your office window. Remember? Harold and Gertrude and... What was the young one? Francis. Isabel's voice was soft. Surprised, he remembered. You said he was rebellious because he always flew against the group. You said it made them characters instead of pests. Their eyes held. Past flickering between them. Not just the pain. But the good parts too. The late-night conversations. The shared jokes. The way they'd understood each other. How they'd fit together before he'd destroyed it all. Sophie looked between them. Picking up on something she couldn't quite name. You knew each other before? Before I was born? We did. Isabel said carefully. We worked together. We were. She paused. Friends. Matthias wanted to correct it. To say they'd been more than friends. But he understood. This wasn't the time. Sophie didn't need to know everything yet. Complexity could come later. Sophie yawned. Wide. Not covering her mouth. Her eyes drooped despite her best efforts to stay alert. Bedtime, Mija. Isabel said. Standing. Clearing plates. Say goodnight to Mr. Sterling. Can't he read me a story? Sophie pleaded. Just one. Please. I'll brush my teeth extra good. Isabel hesitated. Matthias held his breath. This felt significant. Bigger than a bedtime story. This was trust. This was letting him into the intimate ritual of their life. This was Isabel deciding if he was safe enough. Consistent enough. Worth the risk. One story. She finally agreed. Her voice firm. Then sleep. You have school tomorrow. Sophie cheered. Grabbed Matthias's hand. Come on. I'll show you my favorites. Sophie's room smelled like lavender and childhood. A nightlight shaped like a moon cast soft light across the walls. She climbed into bed. Pulling covers up. Clutching her rabbit. The same one from the gala. She handed Matthias a well-worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. The same book he'd named as his favorite at dinner. This one. She said. Since it's your favorite too. He settled into the chair beside her bed. Opened the book. The spine was cracked from repeated readings. Some pages had slight tears carefully repaired with tape. This was a beloved book. Read over and over. He began reading. Slowly. Putting voices to the characters. Making the wild things growl and roar. Sophie giggled. Corrected his wild thing voices. No, that one sounds like this. Demonstrated with her own growl. He adjusted. Matched her vision. They moved through the story together. Max sailing to the island. Becoming king of the wild things. The rumpus. Then the journey home to where someone loved him best of all. Stop 4. When he finished, Sophie's eyes were drooping. Fighting sleep but losing. That was good. She murmured. You do good voices. Almost as good as Mama. High praise. He said softly. Setting the book on her nightstand. Will you come back? She asked. Eyes already closed. To read more stories. His throat closed with emotion. If your mother says I can. Then yes. I'd love to. Okay. Good. A pause. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. Good night. Matthias. Good night, Sophie. He managed around the lump in his throat. Sweet dreams. He stood carefully. Quiet. But at the door, her small voice stopped him. I'm glad you came back from your business trip. She said. Sleep slurring her words. I always wanted a dad. The words hit him like a physical force. Every regret. Every missed moment. Every wrong choice crystallized in that one simple statement. I always wanted a dad. Past tense. Like she'd given up hoping. Like she'd accepted that some children had fathers and some didn't and she was in the second category. I'm glad too. He whispered. But she was already asleep. Breathing deep and even. He stood there watching her for a long moment. This child. His daughter. Who'd grown up without him. Who'd learned to be happy anyway. Who'd just let him into her world with the fearless trust only children possess. Isabel stood in the doorway when he emerged. Arms crossed. Watching. She gestured toward the living room with her head. He followed. They stood awkwardly in the small space. Evening winding down. Neither quite knowing how to navigate this strange new territory they'd entered. The history between them was complicated. The present even more so. The future uncertain. She likes you. Isabel finally said. Quiet. Almost reluctant to admit it. She doesn't open up to everyone that quickly. She's remarkable, Isabel. Matthias kept his voice low. Not wanting to wake Sophie. You've done an incredible job raising her. I had help. Isabel wrapped her arms around herself. Defensive posture. My mother. My sister. Good teachers. Good friends. She paused. But mostly it was just us. We've been a team her whole life. Just the two of us against the world. I hate that I wasn't part of that team. The words came out raw. Honest. Not a day will go by that I don't regret it. Missing her first steps. Her first words. 7 years of birthdays. First day of school. Every milestone. I hate that I missed all of it. Isabel studied him. Really looked at him. Searching for something. You really have changed, haven't you? The old Matthias would never have admitted fault. Never showed vulnerability. Never let anyone see him as anything less than perfectly in control. The old Matthias was a fool who destroyed the best thing in his life. He took a careful step closer. Not crowding. Just closing some of the distance. Isabel, I know trust isn't rebuilt in a day. I know I have to earn my place in Sophie's life. In your life, if you'll let me. But I need you to know. I need you to understand. I never stopped loving you. Even when I was too proud and stupid to admit it. Even when I convinced myself I hated you for a betrayal that never happened. Some part of me always knew. Always held on to what we had. Isabel's breath caught. Matthias. Her voice held warning. And longing. And fear. You don't have to say anything. He interrupted gently. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. Not asking you to forget what I did or pretend it doesn't matter. I'm just asking for a chance. To be Sophie's father. To prove I'm not the man who hurt you. To show you that I've learned what really matters. That I've spent 8 years building an empire that means nothing and I'd trade it all. Every penny. Every property. Every success. For the chance to go back and make different choices. Tears slipped down Isabel's cheeks. Silent. She didn't wipe them away. Just let them fall. I loved you so much. The admission was whispered. Painful. When you threw me away, it nearly destroyed me. When you called security like I was some criminal. When you looked at me like I was nothing. Something inside me broke. Something I didn't know could break. I know. His hands clenched at his sides. Physically restraining himself from reaching for her. From trying to comfort when he was the source of the pain. I know. And I'm so sorry. So desperately sorry. Those words are inadequate. They don't fix anything. But they're true. The only thing that kept me going was her. Isabel pressed a hand to her chest. When I found out I was pregnant. When I was sick and scared and alone. When I wanted to give up. I would think about the baby. About her depending on me. Needing me. And I kept going. She saved me, Matthias. Our daughter saved my life. I can't survive that kind of pain again. She continued. Her voice breaking. I can't. I have Sophie to think about. If you come into her life and then leave when it gets hard. When being a father becomes inconvenient or boring or interferes with your empire. I can't let her experience that abandonment. It would break her. And it would finish breaking me. I won't leave. The words were a vow. Sacred. Absolute. I swear on everything I am, I won't leave either of you again. I will be there. Every day. Whatever you need. However you'll let me. 10 years from now, 20, 50. I will still be showing up. Still being present. Still choosing you both over everything else. Isabel shook her head. Tears streaming freely now. I don't know if I can trust that. Trust you. How do I know you mean it? How do I know this isn't just guilt talking? That in 6 months or a year, you won't get bored and go back to your old life. Then don't trust me. Not yet. He said simply. Test me. Set boundaries. Make me prove it. I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll show up as many times as you need. I'll be patient and consistent and I won't push. You set the pace. You set the terms. And I'll meet every one of them. She sobbed once. Pressing her face into her hands. Matthias gently pulled her into his arms. Expecting resistance. Ready to let go if she pushed away. But after a moment's hesitation, she let him. She trembled against his chest. 8 years of pain finally finding release. He held her carefully. Like she was made of spun glass. Like she was precious and breakable and the most important thing in the world. I'm so angry at you. She whispered into his shirt. For leaving. For not listening. For all the moments you missed. For the nights I cried myself to sleep. For the times Sophie asked why she didn't have a daddy and I had to find answers that wouldn't break her heart. I know. He said simply. Be angry. You have every right. And I'm terrified of trusting you again. Of letting you in and having you destroy me all over again. I know. But despite everything. She pulled back to look at him. Face wet with tears. Eyes red. Beautiful in her honesty. Despite everything, some part of me never stopped loving you either. And I hate that. I hate that I still feel anything. I hate that seeing you makes my heart race. I hate that watching you with Sophie made me think maybe. Maybe. Maybe what? He cupped her face gently. Thumbs wiping away tears. The touch familiar after 8 years. Like his hands remembered the shape of her cheeks. Maybe broken things can be mended. She closed her eyes. Leaning into his touch. Maybe people can change. Maybe it's not too late for us. Then hate me. He whispered. Rage at me. Make me earn every smile, every moment, every small piece of trust. But let me try, Isabel. Please. Let me prove I've become someone worth your time. Someone worthy of you and Sophie. She opened her eyes. Looking at him with an expression that held everything. Love and hate and fear and hope all tangled together. Okay. The word came out as a breath. We'll try. For Sophie. For Sophie. He agreed. But they both knew it was more than that. Have you ever wondered if broken trust can really be rebuilt? If a man who lost everything can actually find his way back? If pride can be set aside for love? What you're watching right now is more than a story. It's a lesson about the choices we make and the prices we pay. If this is resonating with you, if you know someone who needs to hear that second chances are real but they have to be earned, do me a favor. Share this video with them. And hit that subscribe button because what happens in the next 6 months will show you exactly what it takes to rebuild a family from ashes. Don't miss it. 6 months later, the first Saturday in May, Matthias stood nervously outside Isabel's apartment building. The same brownstone. The same tree-lined street. But everything was different now. He was different. He'd spent the winter earning his place in Sophie's life. Weekend visits became routine. Every Saturday, sometimes Sundays too. Wednesday dinners. School pickups when Isabel worked late. He'd attended her piano recital in March. Sat in the audience with Isabel's mother, who still watched him with suspicious eyes but had thawed slightly when Sophie ran to him after her performance. "Did you see? Did you see? I only made 2 mistakes." 2 mistakes felt like triumph to a 7-year-old. To him, hearing his daughter play Für Elise with concentrated determination felt like witnessing a miracle. He'd taught Sophie to ice skate in January. Central Park rink. All 3 of them on the ice. Sophie wobbling between them. Holding both their hands. Laughing when she fell. Getting up and trying again. Isabel had fallen once. He'd caught her. Their hands had lingered. Eyes holding. The moment stretching too long. Sophie hadn't noticed. But they had. He'd been there for everyday things too. Helping with homework. Math problems that frustrated Sophie. Reading assignments they'd do together. He'd learned she loved realistic fiction. Stories about regular kids having adventures. Magic was okay, but she preferred books that could actually happen. He'd attended soccer games. Sophie wasn't particularly athletic, but she enjoyed running around with her friends. She scored 1 goal all season. Celebrated like she'd won the World Cup. He and Isabel had cheered so loud the other parents stared. Neither of them cared. He'd been there when Sophie got sick with the flu in February. Showed up with soup. Stayed to help while Isabel was exhausted from 3 nights of interrupted sleep. He'd read to Sophie while Isabel slept on the couch. Changed cool cloths on her forehead. Let her fall asleep watching nature documentaries. David Attenborough's soothing voice narrating ocean life while Sophie's fever finally broke. Isabel had woken to find him still there at 2 in the morning. Sophie asleep in her room. Him in the hallway. Keeping watch. She'd cried. He'd held her. Neither had said anything. No words needed. The walls between them had started crumbling. Slowly. Brick by brick. Coffee in the mornings before Sophie woke. He'd started arriving early. She'd started letting him. They'd sit at her small kitchen table. Talking like they used to. About books. About dreams. About Sophie. About everything. Dinners stretched longer. After Sophie went to bed. They'd wash dishes together. Hands brushing in soapy water. Conversations flowing. Her telling him about her work at the foundation. The kids they were helping. The programs they were building. Him telling her about delegating at work. Stepping back from day-to-day operations. Making space in his life for what mattered. He'd changed everything about how he lived. Worked from home 2 days a week. Turned down business trips. Missed galas and networking events. His business partners noticed. Asked questions. He told them the truth. I have a daughter. I have priorities that matter more than quarterly earnings. The anger in Isabel's eyes had faded. Replaced by something softer. Warmer. She smiled more. Laughed at his jokes. Touched his arm when she talked. Small gestures. But significant. And in Isabel's. The anger had softened day by day. Replaced by tentative friendship. Then something warmer. Something that felt like falling. Coffee that lasted too long. Conversations that stretched past Sophie's bedtime. Hands brushing as they washed dishes together. Lingering a moment too long. Fingers tangling. Neither pulling away as quickly as they should. Last week, he'd finally gathered the courage to ask. Isabel, would you have dinner with me? Not at the apartment. Not with Sophie. Just us. A real date. She'd been surprised. Coffee cup pausing halfway to her lips. Studying him. Seeing his nervousness. His hope. His willingness to hear no if that's what she needed to say. I'd like that. She'd said finally. a small smile playing on her lips. Yes. I'd like that very much. Now he waited, holding a bouquet of peonies. Her favorites. He'd learned that over the winter. Not lilies like he'd thought 8 years ago. Peonies. Pink and white. Delicate and beautiful. He was trying not to fidget. Failing. The door opened. Isabel emerged in a simple blue dress. Nothing fancy. Nothing designer. Just a blue dress that made his heart stop. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders. Longer now than it had been in November. Catching the late afternoon light. "Hi," she said. Shy. Like they were teenagers on a first date instead of two people with 8 years of history and a 7-year-old daughter. "Hi." He handed her the flowers. "You look beautiful." The words were inadequate. She looked like everything. Like home. Like a second chance he didn't deserve but wanted with every fiber of his being. She blushed. Smiling. "You clean up nicely yourself." Taking in his dark jeans and button-down shirt. Casual but put together. Sophie appeared behind her. Wearing pajamas already even though it was only 6. Hair in a messy bun. Grinning like she knew secrets adults didn't. "Have fun on your date," she announced. "Don't stay out too late." Isabel laughed. "Shouldn't I be saying that to you? Grandma's ordering pizza and we're watching Encanto for the millionth time." Sophie was bouncing. Excited. "I'm good." She hugged her mother. Then launched herself at Matthias. "Bye, Dad." He froze. The world stopped. First time. The first time she'd called him that. They'd been building it. She'd been trying it out sometimes. In little ways. Asking Isabel if Dad was coming to dinner. Telling friends at school about her dad. But never directly to him. Never to his face. Isabel's eyes widened. Meeting his over Sophie's head. Understanding the magnitude of the moment. Matthias wrapped his arms around his daughter. Emotion overwhelming him. Threatening to spill over. "Bye, sweetheart." He managed. Voice rough. "Be good for Grandma." "Always am." Sophie pulled back. Grinned. "Mostly." As they walked toward the restaurant, Isabel had insisted somewhere casual, nothing ostentatious. Matthias reached for her hand. She let him take it. Their fingers laced together. Familiar. Right. Like they'd never stopped doing this. "She called me Dad," he said. Wonderingly. Still processing. "I noticed." Isabel squeezed his fingers. "She's been practicing all week. Trying it out. Seeing how it felt. I think she finally felt ready to say it in front of you." Matthias stopped walking. Right there on the busy Brooklyn sidewalk. People flowing around them. Evening settling over the neighborhood. Turned to face her. "Isabel, I know we're taking this slow. I know there's still so much to work through. Still so much hurt that can't be erased. But I need you to know that you and Sophie are my entire world. Everything I've built. Everything I have. Every success, every dollar, every property. It all means nothing without you." Isabel's eyes shimmered. Matthias. His name was soft. Tender. "I'm not asking for forever. Not yet." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture is familiar. Intimate. "But I'm hoping. For another chance. For the future. For us. Not who we were 8 years ago. But who we are now. Who we could be together." She rose on her toes. Kissed him. Soft. Tentative. trembling with possibility. 8 years of longing compressed into one perfect moment. When they parted, she was smiling through tears. "I'm hoping too," she whispered. Above them, the spring sky was impossibly blue, stretched over a city of millions. Indifferent to the small miracles happening every day. Two people finding their way back to each other. Choosing love over pride. Building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Matthias Sterling had spent 8 years as one of the world's most successful men. Built an empire. Made billions. Commanded respect. Moved markets. But walking down a Brooklyn street, holding Isabel's hand, knowing his daughter was safe and happy and calling him Dad. This was the first time he'd ever truly felt wealthy. This was the first time he'd ever truly come home. 1 year later. A family photo. All 3 of them. Official now. Matthias had moved to Brooklyn. Sold the sterile penthouse. Bought a brownstone 3 blocks from Isabel's apartment. They'd taken it slow. Dated for 6 months before he proposed. She'd said yes. Sophie cheered. Been the flower girl at their small wedding. Just family and close friends. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing designed to impress. Just 2 people promising forever. With their daughter as witness. The photo was taken at the zoo. By the sea lion exhibit. Where it had all started. Chester still there. Still sleeping on his rock. Sophie between them. 8 years old now. Still talking to animals. Still dreaming of being an astronaut veterinarian. Still the bridge that brought them back together. All 3 were smiling. Real smiles. Not posed. Not fake. Just joy. Just family. Just home. The lessons here aren't complicated. Pride costs years you can never recover. Trust, once broken, requires daily rebuilding. Love persists even through devastation. But persistence alone isn't enough. It requires action. Requires showing up. Requires putting someone else's needs before your own. Children deserve both parents when possible. Not perfect parents. Just present ones. Ones willing to do the work. Make the sacrifices. Be there even when it's hard. Second chances exist. But they must be earned. Not bought. Not demanded. Earned through consistency. Through changed behavior. Through proving that lessons were learned and growth happened. Forgiveness is possible but not easy. It's a process. Not a moment. It requires the person who caused harm to be patient. To accept boundaries. To respect the pace of healing. Family isn't just blood. It's showing up. Being present. Making sacrifices. Putting someone else's needs before your own ambition. Success means nothing without love. Matthias learned this the hardest way possible. He had billions and felt bankrupt. Because what's the point of having everything if you have no one to share it with? Being right matters less than being together. His pride cost him 8 years. 8 years of his daughter's life. 8 years of partnership with Isabel. 8 years he can never get back. But he learned. Changed. Choose differently. Vulnerability is strength, not weakness. The old Matthias never admitted fault. Never showed emotion. Never let anyone see him as less than perfect. And he was completely alone. The new Matthias learned that being honest about his failures. About his pain. About his desperate need for connection. That was what made him strong. Sometimes the poorest billionaire is the one who has everything except what matters. Sometimes the richest person is the one who lost everything and found their way back home. To love. To family. To truth. Sometimes coming home means letting go of who you were to become who you were meant to be. Matthias had to lose his empire mentality. His controlling nature. His pride. Had to become humble. Patient. Willing to be tested. Willing to wait. Willing to earn what he'd once taken for granted. 8 years is a long time to be wrong. A long time to be alone. A long time to regret. But if you're willing to be honest. To be humble. To show up every single day. To do the work of rebuilding. To put someone else first. To be vulnerable. To earn trust. To never give up. It's never too late to come home. If this story moved you. If you believe in second chances. If you think Matthias earned his redemption. I need to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between pride and love. What did you choose? What would you choose differently now? Like this video if you believe broken things can be mended. And subscribe to Mr. Steven Stories for more life-changing tales. Because everyone deserves to find their way home. Share this with someone who needs to hear that message today. Someone holding on to pride when they should be choosing love. Someone who thinks it's too late. It's never too late if you're willing to do the work. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, success without family is just expensive loneliness. Choose wisely. Choose love. Choose presence over presents. Choose showing up over showing off. Choose the people who matter. Until next time. This is Mr. Steven Stories. Reminding you that the best investment you'll ever make isn't in property or stocks or businesses. It's in the people you love. It's in being there. It's in coming home.